From the Times and the Sunday Times, this is The Story. I'm Manveen Rana. Reporters gathered in the White House on Wednesday for a presidential press briefing thought they knew what to expect. And the president didn't disappoint.
A lot of them are crooked people. A lot of them have been staying out of trouble their whole lives, and they've been bad from the day they were born, frankly. But these are sick people. Pam, go ahead, please.
Well, they're smart, but they're not smart enough. Oh, my microphone's broken.
But suddenly, the script was being rewritten, and history was being made while they watched.
Okay. I'm just giving...
The Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, walked up to the president, whispered something in his ear, and handed him a note.
Yeah, I was just given a note by the Secretary of State saying that we're very close to a deal in the Middle East, and they're going to need me pretty quickly, so I will take a couple of more questions.
The reaction was immediate and widespread. Gazans celebrated in Khan Yunis.
طبعا الحمد لله على وقف إطلاق النار ووقف شلال الدماء والقتل.
President Trump called the delighted families of Israeli hostages.
God bless you, Mr. President. God bless America.
Thank you very much. You just take care of yourselves. The hostages will come back. They're all coming back on Monday.
The sense of momentum is real, but will the deal hold? As we're recording this episode, Israel's government is still voting on whether they'll sign up to the deal. The story today: will there be peace in the Middle East, and will it win Donald Trump the Nobel Peace Prize? Would you mind just starting by introducing yourself to our listeners, telling us who you are, what you do, and where you're talking to us from?
Right, I'm Tal Schneider. I'm the political and diplomatic correspondent for the Times of Israel. And I'm talking from Israel on a very exciting morning here.
With the historic announcement of a deal, we turned to Tal in Israel to find out how the news was being met there. Of course, there is another side to this story. According to the Ministry of Health in Gaza, which is controlled by Hamas, over 67,000 Palestinians have been killed since the war began 2 years ago. Other independent estimates are even higher. With power and internet outages across much of Gaza and international journalists still not being allowed in, it's hard to get the view from there, but we would encourage you to follow Amal Hellis, a Palestinian journalist in exile, for her excellent coverage at thetimes.com. But first, here's Tal. Tal, tell us about the moment you heard a ceasefire deal had been reached.
Last night, we were hearing it may be coming in within an hour or two. And then there were some messages saying that Trump will be the first to announce it on Truth Social. So that was around 1:30 a.m. And I guess I waited up until like 2:30 a.m. when the announcement came on Truth Social. And then obviously the Prime Minister of Israel also issued a very short statement saying that he expects all hostages to come back home. And that was around 3 a.m. altogether. And yep.
Like you, I waited too. There were sort of hints coming out that a deal had been reached. We had pictures of the negotiators in Egypt standing up and hugging each other.
Right, exactly.
So we knew it was coming, but we knew it was going to be declared on Truth Social, and that eventually came. What was your reaction? What did you feel?
I felt joy, relief. And then when I woke up like 4 or 3 hours later, there was the first rain of the season in Israel. As you know, Israel is very, very dry. It's a desert, basically. And 24 and 25 both have been a drought without almost no rain. And, looking from my window and seeing the rain at 8 a.m. in the morning, it felt almost mystical, I was like, so many good news, rain, hostages, end of war, end of bloodshed.
It's lunchtime here in London. It's about 3 p.m. in Tel Aviv. we're still waiting for the Israeli cabinet and the Israeli government to agree to this deal. Talk us through what we know of the deal so far. What does it actually agree?
Well, first and foremost, it's bringing back those hostages who were abducted and taken from their homes or from the Nova festival. This is mostly civilians and some foreigners who were in the region to work or to party, or they just live there in agricultural, very small villages. So the first thing that will happen after the Israeli government will approve the deal, and it will approve the deal, first thing that will happen, there will be a stop of military activities within 24 hours, and then within 72 hours, the people will come out. Those 20 people who are still alive, 26 are murdered, and 2 of them are probably also murdered, but we don't know that yet.
The release of, we think, 20 hostages who are still alive, and the bodies of the hostages who've been killed. And you mentioned in that first 24 hours there will be a ceasefire, an end to hostilities, no more violence in the region, but there will also be a withdrawal of the IDF. Do we know where exactly they will be in Gaza, how far they'll be withdrawing?
The ceasefire has already went into effect partially. What we will see within 24 hours is the withdrawal of the troops. They reached the city of Gaza just lately, and they will take it back to, there is a north to south long road called Salah ad-Din, probably around that area. It's hard for me to give you the specifics, without a map, but it's halfway between Gaza Beach and the border, which is in, kind of the back area of Gaza. And then in the future, this will not stay the line. The line should go further back into the border area. But right now, this is the initial withdrawal. It means that from the heart of the cities, the areas where most Palestinians live, this shouldn't be Israeli military.
And do we know how soon aid will be able to reach Gaza?
The humanitarian aid going up to, I think, 600 trucks a day should enter immediately within the day one of the arrangement of the ceasefire. Also, you will see in the next few days 250 terrorists who were convicted in murder sitting in the Israeli jails. They will be out, and an additional 1,700 people who are not convicted yet or other felonies, and around 400 bodies of Palestinians that are held in Israel, not including the Yahya and Muhammad Sinwar, the brothers who were the mastermind of this massacre.
So the return of bodies, the release of 1,700 prisoners who've been taken since October the 7th. We know that some are women and children, but they haven't been through a trial yet, but they've been held. And then 250 people serving a life sentence. We know that the initial deal that was put forward, the 20-point plan under President Trump, talked about disarming Hamas. We haven't had much detail yet. Do we know what's happening on that front?
By the way, did you know it went down from 21 points to 20 points because they took out the apologies to the Qatari? They made the Israeli prime minister apologize, and the plan went from 21 points to 20 points.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has apologized to the Emir of Qatar for the killing of a Qatari citizen during Israel's attack on Hamas leaders here in Doha.
Yeah, so that was a kind of funny anecdote. So disarming of Hamas is probably has to be negotiated because there is the disarming of Hamas and also the new governmental body that will have to enter into Gaza Strip. And as far as we know, no one in the world will be willing to enter this place as long as there is Hamas militant inside. So if we're talking about international body that will govern the areas, compromised from Indonesian troops or Emirati troops or Turkish troops, those troops and those government, rightly so, do not agree to enter in that region as long as Hamas holds the guns. And I don't know if Hamas in their response to Trump's initial suggestion, they said they were not agreeing to a full disarmament. So it seems very, very complicated.
We'll talk a bit about the detail around the negotiations so far in a moment. Before we do, though, just give me a sense of what the reaction has been like in Israel to the news.
It's it's a joy all over the country. immediately, like at 3 or 4 a.m., the hostage square started to fill up with people. This is a place in Tel Aviv, in central Tel Aviv, that was not named Hostage Square until 2 years ago. It had a different name, but people changed it. People filled this place at around 4 a.m. Some former hostages came to the place, people who were released from Hamas captivity after 16 or 17 months. They came personally and they started celebrating. And then mothers of couple of very young men who are held in Hamas captivity and are supposed to be released this week, they also came to the place and they started dancing. And since early mornings, like 6 a.m., 7 a.m., this square has known very sad rallies through those 2 years. Mostly every Saturday, there was a main rally every Saturday night. Many ceremonies were held there during those 2 years. There's huge screens out there that people donated so people can watch hostages release or other developments. And I think this is maybe the first time that this square has seen happiness instead of gloom and doom.
Tal, you were explaining how, there are some of the details around the negotiation that we still don't quite know. We don't know what's going to happen about disarming Hamas. We don't quite know when the IDF will be able to withdraw completely. Talk us through how we've got here, though, because even a week ago, it looked like some of those obstacles were insurmountable. What do we know about the talks since then and how they were carried out?
Well, you have to go back a little bit further. In a way, I think Trump gave Netanyahu sort of a free hand to do whatever he thinks to do inside Gaza. And Netanyahu decided on putting pressure for military forces. There was huge objection in this country. They said, you cannot just walk out from a hostage deal in order to put more military pressure, because military pressure doesn't bring the hostages back. So this military plan was not popular at all. And also the Israeli stand in the international community was deteriorating very, very fast in the last couple of months since they announced the new military plan. I mean, you could have seen it everywhere in Great Britain, but, in the UN, in France, in Brazil, Canada, everywhere you look. I mean, the country was, we were starting to go into this isolation. It was very, very terrifying. And Trump said to Netanyahu, you are bringing, with the military plans, you are bringing your country down. Where do you want to go with that? Nobody understood. Even the chief IDF inside Israel was, he said, we don't understand where this government is taking us. And then came the Qatari failed attack, where Israelis' airplanes hit senior Hamas people in Doha, Qatar, in a failed attack. They did not manage to take out the Hamas people, but they did hurt other people. And one of them was a Qatari citizen, and the Qatari government was obviously very, very upset. They took it to the White House and they said, you have to put some lines to Netanyahu. And I think from that point, Trump came up with Witkoff and Kushner was added into the game. And then they brought in Turkey, Qatar, and Egypt at the same time to agree to a plan before Israel knew what the plan is. They just put a plan on the table, a written suggestions, and they brought all of those Arab nations to be on board. And then they brought it to the Israelis. So what they did is they did not sink in little details with Netanyahu. Netanyahu have this ability to take you down to a negative path if you dwell into all of those very small details. They said hostages first. And then the Israeli public saw that hostages first, it immediately gave a huge support for him and the plan. And my understanding is that they dragged Netanyahu into that. Obviously, the Prime Minister office claimed differently. The Prime Minister office says that this was their idea and their initiative, but
But interesting. So this is a deal that was sort of hatched using Turkey and Egypt, neighbours, Arab neighbours, and presented as a fait accompli for Netanyahu to agree to.
Almost fait accompli, and then Netanyahu probably had engaged in some of the details, but then when it was brought to the Hamas, It was brought with the very strong backing of Qatar, Turkey, and Egypt, 3 countries that are important to them. And with a lot of pressure coming from Trump. I mean, he speaks to Israeli reporters in parallel, personally speaking to them on WhatsApp. He speaks to the families of the hostages. And, at a certain point, it feels as if he is replacing our leadership. It's quite, reporters here don't get to speak to the Israeli leaders. And then they do get on a WhatsApp, a personal WhatsApp with the president.
Tal, give us a sense of the potential problems for Netanyahu. What will the Israeli people want from him after this deal is signed? Will there be a reckoning? Will he have to face questions about his conduct? Because, there have been allegations that his conduct with the war has sometimes been driven by self-interest and the fear of what comes next. When this ceasefire is established, not only does he risk his coalition falling, but just give us a sense of, in Israel, what are the questions that people want answered from him?
There is a huge support in Israel for national inquiry, as opposed to just regular inquiry. He will try to set up just a regular formal inquiry, which means he gets to pick the judges, the judge that sits on this panel, as opposed to a formal inquiry under the law where the people who have to be under investigation do not get to choose the panel.
And what would the inquiry be about? What do they want it to focus on?
Yeah, they will want to focus on the events that led to the terror act, because...
To October the 7th.
Exactly, 2 years ago, because as we all know, Qatar, the government of Qatar, was paying a lot of money to be brought into the Hamas. There was this concept here by Netanyahu, not my concept, but Netanyahu was he was sharing this concept that if you bring money to terrorists, they will put their weapons down and they will settle into this suburbia life. It was like a kind of a business-like kind of way of thinking. We'll bring them money, they'll have jobs. They don't want to ruin that for themselves. And obviously the terrorists, what they did, they took all of the money to build this unbelievable infrastructure of tunnels. And it's all was paid by this Qatari money that was brought in. And there is a lot of blame to put on the people who designed this concept of paying money for terrorists because we think they will change their ways.
So there's a lot of questions for Netanyahu to answer, and there could be a big national inquiry about the events of October the 7th when the war does end, which must play on his mind in these negotiations. Tal, talk us through what happens next. What are we expecting over the next few days?
So we're going to see the hostages, I hope, 20 of them at the same time. They will be just out. And obviously, they will be treated in Israel's hospitals for a while. And we're going to see a lot of funerals because we're going to have 28 more people to bury. After that, we will have to see how, the most crucial thing is how the IDF is rearranging itself around the border to protect the Israeli people inside the country. So we are looking for a situation where we are not bombarded anymore. So you need a whole kind of a fix on the society, with, it's not just money, it's about, kind of a reconstruction of the society. Because people here are devastated. You had around 1,500 houses and buildings that were shattered to pieces by the Iranian missiles. You still have probably around 40 to 50,000 people internally displaced. And obviously, I speak only on behalf of the Israeli society. I don't even want to start talking or explaining what's going on the other side, which is much more horrific. And they will need, I'm talking about the people inside Gaza. This is... it's beyond imagination on what you see over there. No medical services, no housing, no education services. This is it's partially on Israel's plate, of course. I mean, it's not that Israel is going to pay for that, but Israel will have to bring in the materials to rebuild their society. And, I don't know how even to start with that. It's obviously unprecedented, I think, in world's history, what you see from there.
Tal, we know that in the next couple of days, Donald Trump has said that he'll be visiting Israel and perhaps addressing the Knesset. What sort of a welcome will he get? And do you think he'll be a winner of the Nobel Peace Prize by then?
The announcement on the Nobel Prize is on Friday. That is, when we're recording it is on Thursday, so it's tomorrow. So we'll know by the time he gets here. He is nominated by an Israeli professor who lives in the United States, in Cleveland area. I don't know to tell you what will take place, but obviously he will be admired here because the way he conducted this, diplomatic scene, it's in a very unique and unprecedented way.
Nobel Prize to Trump! Nobel Prize to Trump!
Yes!
Nobel Prize to Trump!
Yes!
Nobel Prize to Trump!
The Prime Minister will hug him and embrace him, but if you look at the Israeli people from the very far left to the very far right, he used to be more, people in the left used to criticize him more. But, with the situation right now, when he is like the rescuer of these hostages, you're going to see a lot of demonstrations of admiration to him, I would say. It started already. People are putting costumes of Trump. They're dancing in the street with kind of a makeup artist with his face. It's all over the place. I heard one of the fathers of a hostage who is still being held in Gaza, the father of Eitan Horn. I heard him on TV just like a couple of hours ago, and he said, "We want to change the hostage square name into Trump Square."
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's going to be a very cheerful visit, I suppose.
Well, Tal, thanks so much for talking to us. We really appreciate that.
Sure.
And let's see what happens in the next 24 hours.
Yes, thank you so much. We have this optimistic couple of days here.
That was Tal Schneider, political and diplomatic correspondent for the Times of Israel, speaking to us from Tel Aviv. Of course, this is a day of cautious hope amid unimaginable suffering for the Palestinians in Gaza. And our Palestinian colleague, Amal Hellers, spoke to Gazans who've lost their homes, their families, and are on the brink of starvation as we mark the 2-year anniversary of this war. We'll put a link to her piece in the description of this episode. If you can, please do have a read. The producer today was Olivia Case. The executive producer was Taryn Siegel. Sound design and theme composition were by Malasetto. If you'd like to get in touch with us, drop us a line to thestory@thetimes.com. Thanks for listening. We'll be back tomorrow.